two important functions to strings are the length function to determine how long a string is, how many characters long it is, and the charAt function, which determines what is the value of a character at a particular place in the array. Like this is place 0, the first spot is 0 because we start counting at 0, and then 1, and then 2, and so on and so forth. So first let's look at length. To determine the length of a string, that's the string's variable name, and then dot length. This isn't going to show it'll run, but it's not going to show us anything because I'm not using this value. This whole thing is just an integer value right now. So if I want to see what that integer value is, for example, one of the things I could do is say text sentence.length, just use that whole thing as the first parameter, and then display it someplace. So now we're going to learn that this string is 44 characters long. The charAt function works the same way, determining the particular character value at a particular place in the array. So it returns, instead of an integer, it's a character. So again, it would be the string name dot charAt, and then the parameter it'll take is this place in the array. So this is the third character, but because we start with 0, this is in the second place in this string. So I'm going to put charAt 2. Again, this will run, but since this is just the whole value of this is just the character E in this case, it's not going to look any different unless I do something with it. So same situation, I could say text sentence charAt 2, comma 50, let's say 300, and it will display our E. One of the main helpful functions of the dot length function is if a string is particularly long, you don't have to go through and count how many characters are in it. You can just use this if you need to, for example, check every character in that array, which is what we're going to do right now. If I wanted to check to say, for example, if there was a particular character contained somewhere in a string. Did I say array before? I meant string. Somewhere in that string, I could say for, I'm going to check each one by saying counter variable I equals 0. I is less than sentence.length. You can use 44 for the same results because we know this string has a length of 44, but again, if you didn't want to have to stop and count, and then count through each item in the array. And then here I'm going to make a conditional statement using charAt. So if sentence.charAt, and then I'm going to use that counter variable. So the first time through the for loop, it'll check charAt 0, then charAt 1, then charAt 2, and so on and so forth until it gets to the end. So if that character equals, let's say E again, then for example I could say text, there is an E in this string. Close the conditional, close the for loop. Now you'll observe that this looks sort of bold, and that's because this for loop is going to get a true result for this conditional statement a couple of times because there is more than one E in this string. So if you wanted to, for example, find out how many E's are in this string, we can use another kind of local variable. One of the ways that we can do this is we could just, instead of displaying something out, we could count up each time the text found E in the text. For that though, if I make a global variable up here, it's going to keep adding on and on. So we want to reestablish it at 0 each time draw calls through, because we only wanted to add up while that for loop is running. So I'm going to say int, let's just say num e for numbers of e's equals 0. So every time draw starts over, it'll reset back to 0, so it doesn't keep adding 60 times a second onto that value. Then in that conditional sentence, I can say num e plus plus. So if I get an e, I'm going to add onto it. And then after the for loop, I could say text, well, let's just put num e, so that value for now. So there are 4 e's in that string. And again, if I did not have a, if I weren't making this variable local to draw and resetting it back at 0 each time draw starts over, it's going to add on 4 e's every time through draw, so 60 times a second. So that looks a little bit more like this. Not exactly what we want. So let's put that back where we had it. So just every time through, it'll reset that value. So this is a good way if you want to count the instances in a string of a particular character using those two functions.